In the deepest chamber of Morgwyn Palace, a withered arm hangs from a blood-drenched cocoon, dripping endlessly into pools that never fill. It belongs to a child. Except the child is thousands of years old, his flesh ancient as parchment, his mind sharper than any blade. This is Miquella the Kind, the most beloved demigod in all the lands between, stolen away and imprisoned in an underground nightmare of blood rituals and obsessive worship. For years, Morg, the Lord of Blood, has stood vigil over this cocoon. He has drenched it in blood. He has whispered promises of dynasty and godhood. He has built an entire religion around the moment when Miquella will finally awaken and make Morg his consort, his king, his partner in reshaping the world. Morg believes with absolute certainty that he is the architect of this grand design. But what if I told you that every thought in Morg's head was planted there? That every ritual, every drop of blood, every whispered prayer was exactly what Miquella wanted? That the kindest, gentlest, most compassionate demigod in the lands between orchestrated his own kidnapping, turned a demigod into a puppet, and did it all as just one small step in a plan so vast and so terrible that it would make the gods themselves kneel? What if I told you that Miquella was never the victim? Morg was never in control, not for a single moment. Everything that happened in this festering palace, every drop of blood spilled, every dark ritual performed, was exactly what Miquella wanted. The kindest of demigods, the one who sought to cure his sister's rot and create a sanctuary for the outcasts of the world, had orchestrated his own kidnapping. He had reached into Morg's mind and planted the obsession there like a seed, compelling him to commit these acts, all so Miquella could use him, then use his corpse as a vessel for something far more terrible. And standing vigil at the roots of a dying tree far to the north, waiting for a brother who would never return, was Malenia, the undefeated blade, the goddess of rot, she who had never known defeat. She believed her brother would keep his promise, that he possessed the wisdom and allure of a god, that he was the most fearsome Empyrean of all. She was right about that last part, just not in the way she thought. This is the story of the twin prodigies, Miquella and Malenia, a story of curses and cures, of devotion twisted into chains, of love that became the most dangerous weapon in the lands between. It is a story where the villain wears the face of kindness, where the greatest warrior's strength could not save what mattered most, and where the line between salvation and damnation dissolved like gold in blood. Let us begin at the beginning, with two children born under a curse that would reshape the world. Born of one god. To understand Miquella and Malenia, we must first understand the impossible circumstance of their birth. They were not simply demigods born to Queen Marika, the Eternal, sovereign of the lands between and vessel of the Elden Ring. They were something far more significant and far more cursed. The twins were born of a single god. Queen Marika and Radahn of the Golden Order were not merely husband and wife. They were two halves of the same being, one entity split into two forms. The remembrance of the Rot goddess makes this clear when it states that Miquella and Malenia were born of a single god, which is what made them both Empyreans. This paradox of identity, Marika and Radahn being fundamentally one being, meant that when they conceived children together, those children were born not from the union of two parents, but from a god reproducing with itself. This made Miquella and Malenia Empyreans, beings chosen by the two fingers as potential successors to Marika, candidates to become the next god of a new age. Only those of divine blood with the right heritage could be Empyreans. Malenia's own great rune describes how hers should have been the most sacred of all, suggesting the special nature of their birth elevated them above even other demigods. But divinity demands payment. The lands between operate on principles of cosmic balance, and power of this magnitude inevitably extracts its price. For the twins, that price was written into their very flesh from the moment they drew breath. Miquella was cursed with eternal childhood. His body would never mature, never grow beyond the form of a young boy, regardless of how many years passed. We see evidence of this throughout the game. He is consistently referred to as young, as a child, even though he is clearly ancient in terms of years lived. His mind developed, his intellect flourished to genius levels, but his flesh remained trapped in youth. For an Empyrean destined to potentially become a god and reshape the world, being forever locked in a child's body meant being forever incomplete, forever denied the full power that should have been his birthright. Malenia's curse was more immediately horrific. She was born harboring the scarlet rot within her very body. This was no ordinary disease. The scarlet rot was the manifestation of an outer god, a cosmic entity of decay and rebirth. The Blue Dancer charm tells us that long ago, a blind swordsman had sealed away this ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Yet somehow this outer god's essence had taken root in Malenia before she was even born. The rot consumed her slowly, inexorably from the inside out. Her eyes were taken, leaving her permanently blind. Then her limbs began to succumb. Her right arm, her left leg, the bottom half of her right leg, all devoured by the rot. The scarlet rot was not merely destroying her body, but also threatened her mind, her sense of self, her very soul. It whispered to her constantly, calling her to surrender, to bloom, to become its true vessel and goddess. Yet despite these cruel afflictions, or perhaps because of them, the twins developed into what Morgoth the Omen King would call the twin prodigies. They were extraordinary even among demigods. Malenia, blind and missing multiple limbs, became one of the greatest warriors the lands between had ever seen, a swordswoman who had never known defeat in battle. Miquella, forever child-sized and unable to claim the physical power of maturity, instead became a genius of the highest order, creating new incantations that even impressed his father Radahn. But perhaps their greatest achievement was the bond they forged with each other. Malenia became known as the Blade of Miquella. She was his sworn protector, his undefeated champion, his blade to strike down any who would threaten him. The prosthesis-wearer heirloom confirms that the twins were very close, with Malenia becoming Miquella's sworn blade and protector. Her devotion to her twin was absolute, unwavering, carved into the very core of who she was. When she introduced herself to enemies, she did not lead with her own name or titles. She said, "I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella." His identity came before her own, and Miquella dedicated his brilliant mind to finding a cure for his sister's rot. While she stood as his shield, he worked tirelessly in pursuit of knowledge that could save her. The genius and the blade, the mind and the sword, the healer and the warrior. Two halves of a whole, much like their parents, bound together by love and necessity in equal measure. In the golden halls of Leyndell, the other demigods schemed and plotted for supremacy. Godwyn the Golden cultivated his network of allies. Rickard studied forbidden knowledge. Ranni made her own secret plans. Morg and Morgoth were shunned as omen, hidden away in shame. But in whatever quiet corners they inhabited, Miquella studied the fundamental principles of the Golden Order, while Malenia trained her body to compensate for the flesh the rot had stolen. They were young, they were brilliant, and they were cursed. And they were making plans of their own, plans that would one day shake the foundations of the lands between. The question that should have been asked then was this: what happens when someone cursed with eternal childhood grows up on the inside? What kind of mind develops when trapped in a body that will never match it? What calculations does someone make when they have forever to plan, but know their body is a prison? The answer would only become clear much later, and by then, it would be far too late to stop what Miquella had set in motion. The Golden Order fails. Miquella's early years were marked by devotion to Golden Order fundamentalism, the intellectual discipline that sought to understand and manipulate the fundamental laws governing the lands between. He was a natural prodigy in this field, his mind capable of comprehending principles that baffled scholars who had spent lifetimes in study. He created incantations as gifts for his father, Radahn. The discus of light and triple rings of light were his innovations, elegant expressions of the Golden Order's power shaped into new forms. These incantations still exist in the game world, testament to Miquella's early brilliance and his initial faith in the Order. But Miquella's studies were never purely academic. Every principle he mastered, every incantation he developed, every secret of fundamentalism he unlocked, was examined through a single lens. Could this save Malenia? He watched his twin sister struggle with the rot day after day. He saw her lose her limbs despite all the healing the Golden Order could offer, and he refused to accept this fate as inevitable. Miquella poured himself into the study of fundamentalism with ferocious intensity. If the Golden Order was truly the perfect system, the divine arrangement that governed all reality, then surely it held the answer. Surely somewhere in its principles was the key to purging outer gods, to severing the connection between his sister and the entity of rot that was devouring her. Years passed. Miquella's knowledge grew vast. His understanding of fundamentalism became so profound that he could see the elegant mathematical certainty underlying reality itself. And none of it helped Malenia at all. The description of Radagon's rings of light states this plainly. And yet, the young Miquella abandoned fundamentalism, for it could do nothing to treat Malenia's accursed rot. This was the beginning of Unalloyed Gold. The Golden Order fundamentalism, for all its power and all its perfection, could do nothing to treat her accursed rot. The incantations could slow it fractionally, temporarily, but they could not stop it because the scarlet rot existed outside the order that fundamentalism was built to understand. This was the first great disillusionment of Miquella's life, though it would not be the last. Around this same time, tragedy struck the demigod family in a more immediate way. Godwyn the Golden, the first demigod, beloved by nearly all, was assassinated during the Night of Black Knives. His soul was killed, but his body lived on in a grotesque half-death, a violation of the natural order so profound that it sent ripples through the entire Golden Order. Miquella, who had known Godwyn as a half-brother, was horrified. The Golden Epitaph sword description tells us that he crafted this weapon in Godwyn's honor, imbuing it with a prayer. "O brother, Lord brother, please die a true death." This reveals both Miquella's affection for Godwyn and his desperate hope that prayer and effort might grant his brother peace. He sought a way to grant Godwyn a complete death, to sever the half-life and let his brother's soul rest. He researched, he experimented, he tried everything his prodigious mind could conceive. And again, the Golden Order failed him. Godwyn remained trapped in his grotesque half-death. The prayer went unanswered. Fundamentalism, for all its perfection, could not address this violation of its own rules. Two failures. Two people he cared about suffering from conditions the Golden Order could neither explain nor fix. Malenia's rot continued to spread. Godwyn's deathless body continued to grow and twist beneath the Erdtree. And Miquella began to understand a terrible truth. The Golden Order was not perfect. It was powerful, yes, but it was also limited, bound by its own rules, unable to address problems that originated outside its framework. Outer gods like the god of scarlet rot existed beyond its reach. States like Godwyn's half-death violated its principles but could not be corrected by them. Something shifted in Miquella then. He had been a true believer, a faithful student of fundamentalism. But faith, once cracked, can shatter completely. And Miquella's mind was too brilliant, too clear, too ruthlessly logical to cling to a system that had proven inadequate. He turned away from the order that had been his whole world. He left behind the golden fundamentalism that his father had mastered. He stepped off the path that would have led him to become another cog in the machine of the greater will's design. And he began to walk a different road, one that would lead him to create something new, something pure, something unalloyed, something that could resist the meddling of outer gods. But here is what we don't learn until much, much later, and this is crucial to understanding everything that follows. When Miquella discovered how to resist the influence of outer gods, he didn't just create a defensive tool. He created the key to controlling people. Because if you can ward away external influence, if you can create purity that nothing can corrupt, you can also use that same purity to impose your own influence, to compel, to control, to rewrite what people believe and feel. The moment Miquella learned to make unalloyed gold was the moment he gained the power to steal free will itself. And based on everything that follows, everything we discover in the shadow of the Erdtree, we have to ask ourselves, did Miquella discover this property by accident? Or was controlling people always part of the plan? Did saving his sister require becoming a god? Or did becoming a god require a convenient justification? We want to believe it was an accident. We want to believe the kind boy who loved his sister. But the evidence suggests something far more disturbing. That Miquella understood exactly what he was creating from the very beginning. In doing so, Miquella became something the Golden Order had perhaps never truly faced before, a genius of their own system who understood its principles completely and chose to reject it anyway, not out of ignorance or malice, but out of a clear-eyed recognition that it was insufficient. He would find his own way to save Malenia. He would develop his own solutions to the problems the Order could not address. This was the fork in the road where Miquella the prodigy became Miquella the Unalloyed. His sister needed him. The Golden Order had failed her, so he would not fail her. Whatever it took, whatever he had to create, whatever he had to sacrifice, whatever he had to become. And if we're being honest about what the evidence shows us, perhaps what Miquella became was what he always intended to be. Not despite his good intentions, but because of them. Unalloyed gold, the metal of purity. When Miquella abandoned fundamentalism and began his independent research, he sought to create something the Golden Order could not. Gold that was not bound to the greater will. Gold that carried no allegiance to the Elden Ring. Gold that existed in its purest state, completely unalloyed. The unalloyed gold needle's description provides crucial information. It is a ritual implement crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods. This was Miquella's breakthrough, creating a substance that could resist the influence of entities like the outer god of rot. Pure gold, from a metallurgical perspective, is soft and malleable. It does not rust or corrode. It resists decay and maintains its essential nature even when subjected to extreme conditions. In Miquella's hands, these physical properties carried metaphysical significance. Unalloyed gold became something remarkable. It was gold that could resist the meddling of outer gods, not by overpowering them, but by being so pure, so essentially itself, that external influences simply could not take root in it. This was revolutionary. The Golden Order dealt with outer gods by accepting the Greater Will's authority. Miquella's Unalloyed Gold rejected all outer gods equally. His first great creation was the needle. The Unalloyed Gold needle could be inserted into flesh, and once inside a living body, it would ward away the meddling of outer gods. For Malenia, this meant hope for the first time since her birth. Miquella crafted a needle specifically for his sister. When he finally completed it and gave it to Malenia, when she accepted this gift and allowed him to insert it into her body, the rot's progression slowed. The whispers quieted. Malenia's mind cleared, no longer consumed by the constant battle against the entity trying to possess her completely. It was not a cure. Miquella was honest about that, as evidenced by item descriptions noting the needle could only forestall the rot, not eliminate it. The needle could suppress the outer god's influence, keep it at bay, but it could not sever the connection completely. Malenia had been born with this curse. The needle gave her control, gave her time, gave her a life beyond just suffering and decay. But it had to remain inserted. If it was ever removed or broken, the rot would return with devastating force. For Malenia, this was more than she had ever dared hope for. With the needle in place, she could train. She could fight. She could become the warrior she was meant to be. Miquella had given her a chance at life, at purpose, at being more than her curse. The prosthesis wearer heirloom notes that he also crafted her prosthetic limbs from unalloyed gold, replacing what the rot had taken with material that would never corrode or decay. But Miquella's creations did not stop with the needles. Unalloyed gold became the symbol of everything he built. He used it to create armor and weapons for those who would swear to follow him. The Haligtree knights wore helms crowned with this pure metal. To wear unalloyed gold was to mark yourself as one who followed Miquella's vision rather than the Golden Order's design. However, there's a darker aspect to unalloyed gold that emerges from careful examination of the lore. The bewitching branch description is revealing. The Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. This branch is crafted using unalloyed gold incantations and can temporarily turn enemies into allies. This suggests Miquella discovered something else in his pure gold. It could be used to affect people's minds and hearts, to compel affection, to make people love him and serve his cause. Whether this was always part of his plan, or something he discovered accidentally and then chose to exploit, we cannot know for certain. But what we can observe is that many people loved Miquella with seemingly absolute loyalty, and the mechanics of unalloyed gold suggest this devotion may not have always been freely given. The bewitching branch proves the capability exists. The question becomes, how extensively did Miquella use this power? Were the Albinaurics genuinely drawn to his sanctuary, or were they compelled? Did the Cleanrot Knights willingly accept exposure to Malenia's rot, or were they charmed into making this sacrifice? This ambiguity haunts everything Miquella built. He created something pure to resist outer gods' manipulation, but then used that same purity to impose his own form of control. The tool meant to preserve free will from cosmic entities became an instrument for removing free will on a personal level. Still, in those early days, creating unalloyed gold and helping his sister, Miquella probably told himself it was all for good reasons. He was helping people. He was creating a sanctuary for the oppressed. He was building something better than the cruel, rigid Golden Order that had failed him. He had created something that could resist the gods themselves. And now, with this tool in hand, He would build a new world, a kinder world, a gentler world. He would build the Haligtree. The Haligtree, sanctuary and prison. There is a fortress called Elfheil, built in ancient times, perched among mountain peaks far to the north of the lands between. Miquella claimed this isolated location and began his greatest work. He would grow a tree. The Erdtree was the symbol of the Golden Order, the manifestation of the Greater Will's power. From Miquella's new perspective, it also represented everything that was wrong. An order that allowed his sister to suffer, that trapped him in eternal childhood, that could not grant his brother Godwyn true death. So Miquella would make his own tree, one not bound to the Greater Will. The Haligtree crest, Great Shield description, tells us that Miquella watered a sapling with his own blood in an attempt to grow a new Erdtree. This was an act of either devotion or desperation, or both. To give his blood to the tree was to give it his essence, his potential, his very divinity. Day after day, he bled for the tree. And slowly, impossibly, it began to grow. The Haligtree rose from Elfheil, its roots spreading deep into the fortress, its branches reaching toward the sky. It grew golden and beautiful, almost but not quite like the Erdtree, following its own pattern. This was Miquella's tree, and it represented his vision for a better world. As it grew, it became something else, a sanctuary. Word began to spread through the lands between of a place where the cursed and the rejected could find refuge. The Haligtree became known as a haven for those scorned by the Golden Order. The Albinaurics came first. These artificial beings, created by human hands, were despised by the Golden Order as impure abominations. The Haligtree shield description notes that the Albinaurics are deemed at birth to be unborn Empyreans, and thus must make their way to the Haligtree. They called it the Promised Land, and made the pilgrimage despite knowing many would die on the way. The misbegotten followed, beings born cursed and malformed, considered impure by the Golden Order's standards. The perfumer Trisha's ashes mention that the misbegotten were seen as impure in the lands between, making the Haligtree's acceptance of them significant. The Cleanrot Knights, elite warriors who served Malenia, knew what they were choosing. The Cleanrot Knight armor description explicitly states they vowed to fight alongside her, despite the inevitable, gradual putrefaction of their flesh. To fight beside the blade of Miquella meant constant exposure to her scarlet rot, yet they swore their oaths anyway. But we must ask, how many of these devotees came freely, and how many were compelled? Miquella had learned to use unalloyed gold to compel affection. The bewitching branch proves he had this ability. Did the Albinaurics truly see the Haligtree as the Promised Land? Or did Miquella's power make them see it that way? We cannot know for certain, and this ambiguity haunts Miquella's entire endeavor. What we can say is that whether freely given or compelled, the loyalty was real and absolute. These people devoted everything to Miquella's cause. At the center of all this, at the base of the Haligtree's roots, Miquella made his own cocoon. This was his attempt to cure himself, to finally grow beyond the curse of eternal childhood. If the tree was nourished by his blood and grew to maturity, and if he embedded himself within it, connected his essence to it completely, then perhaps he could grow with it. Malenia stood guard over her brother's cocoon, as described in her winged helm. Malenia awaited Miquella at the foot of the husk. She waited, ready to cut down any who would threaten him while he was vulnerable. But here is what few understood at the time. The Haligtree had limits written into its very design. The Haligtree Knight armor carries a devastating revelation. Though watered with Miquella's own blood since it was a sapling, the Haligtree ultimately failed to grow into an Erdtree. Failed. Despite everything Miquella poured into it, despite years of sacrifice, despite the divine blood fed to its roots, the Haligtree could not become what he needed it to be. It grew large and beautiful, yes. It created a sanctuary, yes. But it was not an Erdtree. It did not have the full power and independence he had hoped to achieve. Based on what we learn in Shadow of the Erdtree, this failure could imply that Miquella's plan had always been more complex than simply growing a tree. The Haligtree may have been a stepping stone toward true godhood, rather than the destination itself. The secret rite scroll from the DLC mentions a ritual involving the divine gateway, said to be found at the tower enshrouded by shadow, suggesting Miquella knew of another path to godhood beyond the Haligtree. But whether he always knew the tree would fail, or only realized it after years of trying, the result was the same. Miquella needed a different approach. For a time, measured in years or decades, Miquella slumbered in his cocoon at the base of his tree. Malenia guarded him with unwavering vigilance. The sanctuary grew and thrived, and it must have seemed to those who believed in Miquella's vision that they were building something that could truly change the world. Then the shattering came. Queen Marika shattered the Elden Ring. The order of the world broke. The demigods went to war, and in that chaos, Morg, Lord of Blood, descended upon the Haligtree and took Miquella's cocoon. Malenia pursued him. She pursued him to Caelid, where she met an enemy she could not defeat through skill alone. And in her desperation, she would do something that would scar the world forever. She would break the needle. The blind swordsman's legacy. To understand what made Malenia so terrifyingly powerful, we need to step back and look at her training. Malenia was not born knowing how to fight. She was born blind, cursed, and missing limbs. By all reasonable expectations, she should have been a victim, not a warrior. But somewhere in her youth, Malenia encountered the legendary blind swordsman. The Blue Dancer charm tells us the essential detail. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Long before Malenia was born, there was a swordsman who fought against the outer god of rot and actually sealed it away. This same swordsman was blind, and despite his blindness, he had achieved such mastery with the blade that he could fight a god. When Malenia, herself blind and harboring that same god of rot within her own body, met this swordsman, something remarkable happened. The prosthesis wearer heirloom tells us, though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. She became his student, and he taught her to transform her curses into strength. The swordsman taught her his style, built on flowing movements and reading the battle through senses other than sight. For Malenia, already blind, this was perfect. She didn't need eyes to fight. She learned to feel the displacement of air, to hear the whisper of a blade cutting toward her, to sense intent and movement through a warrior's instinct honed to supernatural sharpness. But more than technique, based on what we can infer from Malenia's later abilities, the swordsman seems to have taught her something crucial about the rot itself. He had sealed the outer god, so he understood it in ways no one else could. He may have taught her how to control the rot, rather than simply suppress it, how to use it as a weapon while maintaining her sense of self. Under his tutelage, she developed her signature technique, the waterfowl dance. This was not a simple sword technique. It was an expression of perfect mastery, an attack that flowed like water, that could strike from multiple angles with such speed that even the greatest warriors could barely perceive it. She also developed what the prosthesis wearer heirloom calls her wings of unparalleled strength. We see these wings manifest when she enters her goddess form, great wings made of countless scarlet butterflies, formed from her own hair and the essence of the rot itself. By the time her training was complete, Malenia had become something unprecedented. A warrior who had never known defeat, the greatest swordswoman in the lands between. And all of this despite being blind, despite missing limbs, despite harboring a god of decay within her flesh. She was the blade of Miquella, his sworn protector, the weapon he could unleash upon any who threatened them. The Hand of Malenia weapon description notes it is as long as she is tall, emphasizing how her fighting style used every inch of her reach and prosthetic arm strength. But perhaps the most important thing the blind swordsman taught her was how to fight while maintaining her sense of self, her pride, her dignity. The rot was always there, always whispering, always calling her to surrender, to bloom fully, to become its perfect vessel. And Malenia refused. She would fight as herself. She would win through skill, through technique, through the mastery she had earned. The rot was her curse, her burden, the thing her brother was trying to cure. She would not embrace it willingly. When the shattering came and she had to march to war, she led her clean rot knights south with absolute confidence. She had never been defeated. Her brothers, Needle kept the rot at bay. Her training had made her unstoppable. She could not have known that she would face an enemy who would push her to the absolute limit, that she would be forced to make a choice between defeat and devastation, that she would, in her moment of greatest desperation, have to abandon everything the blind swordsman taught her and everything she believed about herself. She could not have known that she would break the needle and bloom. The vow between princes. Before we reach the horror of Aeonia, we need to understand what led Malenia there. Why was she fighting Radahn? The answer lies in a vow made long ago, when Miquella and Radahn were both much younger, before the shattering broke the world. The remembrance of a god and a lord, obtained after defeating the final boss of Shadow of the Erdtree, tells us, in their childhood, Miquella saw in Radahn a lord, his strength and his kindness that stood in stark contrast with their afflicted selves. And so Miquella made his heartfelt wish, that Radahn would one day be his king consort. This revelation recontextualizes much of what happened. Miquella, the eternally young genius, looked at Radahn and saw someone he admired. Radahn was everything Miquella's curse prevented him from being. Strong in body, physically imposing, a mighty warrior. But Radahn was also, by reputation, kind. The Star Scourge. Radahn lore notes he learned gravity magic so he could continue riding his beloved but scrawny horse Leonard. He was beloved by his soldiers and looked up to Godfrey as a heroic ideal. To Miquella, cursed to eternal childhood, Radahn must have seemed like the perfect complement. If Miquella could become a god, and if Radahn stood beside him as consort and lord, together they could create the age of compassion Miquella envisioned. So Miquella made a vow with Radahn. The final boss cutscene gives us Miquella's words. Lord brother, I'm going to be a god. If we honor our part of the vow, promise me you'll be my consort. I'll make the world a gentler place. The vow seems to have had conditions on both sides. There was something Miquella had to honor, and in exchange Radahn would become his consort when Miquella ascended to godhood. But here's where things become complicated. Did Radahn truly agree to this vow of his own free will? Or was he charmed into it? The game does not give us a definitive answer. The young lion's armor mentions that Malenia knew of Miquella's promise with her brother Radahn, suggesting this was openly discussed. If it was secret manipulation, why would Malenia know about it? However, we also know from Shadow of the Erdtree that Miquella extensively used his power to compel affection. Sir Ansbach discovers that Miquella charmed Morg completely. If he would manipulate Morg so thoroughly, would he hesitate to ensure Radahn's compliance? What we can say with certainty is that something went wrong. When the shattering came, Radahn did not immediately go to Miquella's side. Instead, he remained in Caelid, holding back the stars themselves with his gravity magic, commanding his armies, fighting his own battles. This suggests either Radahn did not remember the vow, did not intend to honor it, or was prevented from honoring it by circumstances. And here's where we need to talk about what really happened at Aeonia, because the story we've been told isn't complete. Based on what we pieced together from the Shadow of the Erdtree storyline, Miquella needed the vow honored for his plan to work. His path to godhood required Radahn as consort, but there's something darker here that the game only reveals in fragments. Miquella may have needed Radahn dead. Not just defeated, not just convinced, dead. So his soul could be extracted and placed into another body, into Morg's body. Which means when Miquella sent Malenia to Caelid, he may not have been sending her to retrieve Radahn or convince him to honor the vow. He may have been sending her to kill him. And based on what we know about Miquella's power to compel affection, we have to ask, did Malenia know this was a suicide mission? Or did Miquella simply make her believe she was protecting him, serving him, fulfilling her sacred duty as his blade? This reframes the Battle of Aeonia completely. Malenia did not march to Caelid simply as part of the general war between demigods. She went there with a specific mission that may have been designed to result in either Radahn's death, her own death, or both. The young lion's armor confirms Malenia knew about the vow. When she faced Radahn on the battlefield, at the crucial moment, she whispered in his ear, "The remembrance of Star Scourge." Radahn from the DLC tells us what she said. "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." She was reminding him of the vow. But was this a genuine attempt to invoke his memory? Or was it part of a script Miquella had given her, words she was compelled to say at the moment of killing? We cannot know for certain, but the possibility haunts everything about her devotion. It did not work as intended. Radahn did not stand down. He continued fighting, and the battle reached a stalemate with neither able to overcome the other. And so Malenia made the choice that would define the rest of her existence. She reached for the Unalloyed Gold needle and pulled it out. Did she make this choice freely? Or had Miquella prepared her for this moment, ensuring through years of gentle compulsion that when the time came, she would sacrifice everything, her dignity, her sense of self, her very identity as a skilled warrior, to complete his plan? The game leaves this ambiguous. But the pattern of Miquella's behavior, as revealed in Shadow of the Erdtree, suggests a terrible possibility that even Malenia, his devoted sister, the one person who seemed to love him freely, may have been dancing on strings she could not see. The scarlet bloom of Aeonia, the Battle of Aeonia, has become legend in the lands between. Two demigods at the height of their power, Radahn the Star Scourge and Malenia the Undefeated, clashing in combat that shook the earth. The battle raged across Caelid. Radahn's forces crashed against Malenia's clean-wrought knights. Magic and steel, strategy and strength, two demigods trying to prove their supremacy. And slowly, terribly, Malenia began to realize she might lose. Radahn was too strong, too massive, too skilled. His gravity magic allowed him to manipulate the battlefield itself. And he had one crucial advantage. He could afford to fight cautiously, to wear her down, because he was not cursed with rot slowly eating him from within. Malenia needed to end this fight decisively. The clean-wrought knights were falling around her. Her forces were being ground down by Radahn's overwhelming might. Item descriptions tell us she charged Radahn in a desperate assault, and Radahn actually ripped her prosthetic arm off. He was winning. The undefeated swordswoman was about to know defeat for the first time. And so Malenia made her choice. She reached for the unalloyed gold needle with her remaining hand and pulled it free. The moment the needle came out, everything changed. The scarlet rot that had been suppressed for years exploded outward from Malenia's body with apocalyptic force. This was not a controlled use of rot as a weapon. This was complete surrender, the dam breaking, the outer god claiming its vessel at last. Malenia bloomed. The scarlet Aeonia manifested, a massive flower of rot and decay. The scarlet Aeonia incantation description tells us, each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rot advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she will become a true goddess. The rot exploded outward in a wave of devastation. Radahn's soldiers died in agony. The land itself began to decay. Caelid, which had been verdant, started its transformation into the rotting hellscape it would become. Radahn himself was infected. The scarlet rot entered his body, began consuming him from within. His legendary strength could not protect him from this divine plague. The rot took root in his flesh and began its slow, inexorable work. It would not destroy him quickly. It would take time, eating away at his body and his mind, turning him feral and mad. As for Malenia, having bloomed and released the rot, she fell into a deep coma. The transformation had exhausted her completely. She collapsed among the rot flowers, unconscious, vulnerable, and would have died there if not for one of her clean rot knights. Finley. The description of Finley's ashes tells the story. Finley was one of the few survivors of the Battle of Aeonia, who, in an unimaginable act of heroism, carried the slumbering demigod Malenia all the way back to the Haligtree. She managed the feat alone, fending off all manner of foes along the way. Imagine what this meant. Carrying Malenia from Caelid in the far southeast all the way to the Haligtree in the far north, across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. Alone, with her goddess unconscious and vulnerable. The description calls it an unimaginable act of heroism. And that is not hyperbole. Finley succeeded. She brought Malenia back to the Haligtree, and there, at the roots of the tree, Malenia was laid to rest. Still unconscious, still slumbering from the strain of what she had done. But when she returned, Miquella was gone. His cocoon had been taken by Morg. The Haligtree was beginning to fail, its growth stunted without Miquella's blood to nourish it. And Malenia, without the needle, began to slowly infect even her own sanctuary with rot. Yet when she finally awoke, she did not despair. She remained at the foot of the Haligtree, guarding the place where her brother's cocoon had been, convinced he would return. Her winged helm description captures her mindset. Malenia awaited Miquella at the foot of the husk. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all. She waited, for years or decades, as the rot spread through the Haligtree, as the sanctuary decayed, as her own body slowly transformed further into the goddess of rot. She waited for a brother who would never return. Because Miquella's plans had moved far beyond the Haligtree. The needles, the tree, the sanctuary, these were all just steps along a path. And Miquella was willing to sacrifice any of them, even his beloved sister's well-being, to reach his ultimate goal. The kidnapping was not a tragedy. It was the plan all along. The bloody bedchamber. Morg's obsession. Morg the Omen was born cursed, shunned by his mother Queen Marika, imprisoned in the sewers beneath Leyndell. The Omen curse covered his body with horns and twisted his form. While his twin Morgott became a fanatical defender of the order that despised him, Morg went in a different direction. He found an outer god of his own, the Formless Mother, an entity of blood and wounding. She whispered to him in the darkness, gave him power, made him her champion. Morg built a dynasty in the underground where he could gather followers and plot his own ascension. But he needed an Empyrean. To truly create a new order, he needed someone with the potential to become a god. And then, somehow, he learned about Miquella. What happened next has been understood one way for a long time. Morg, obsessed with making Miquella his consort, descended upon the Haligtree and kidnapped Miquella's cocoon. He brought it to Mohgwyn Palace, established his bloody bedchamber, and began his rituals, trying to awaken Miquella. The Remembrance of Morg notes, wishing to raise Miquella to full godhood, Morg wished to become his consort, taking the role of monarch. But no matter how much of his bloody bedchamber he tried to share, he received no response from the young Empyrean. Morg drenched Miquella's cocoon in blood. He performed profane rites. He commanded his followers to feed the slumbering Empyrean, believing this would accelerate Miquella's growth to godhood. And Miquella never responded, never woke, never acknowledged Morg at all. This is what everyone believed. This is what Morg himself believed. But Shadow of the Erdtree reveals the truth, and the truth is so much worse. Miquella orchestrated the entire thing. Sir Ansbach, a pure-blood knight who served Morg loyally, discovered the truth. As if using Lord Morg to gain entrance to the land of Shadow were not enough, he plans to use his corpse as the vessel of his king consort. He has forsaken Lord Morg's soul. Miquella charmed Morg. He reached into the Lord of Blood's mind, planted the obsession there, made Morg believe that taking Miquella would allow him to achieve his destiny. Every thought Morg had about creating a dynasty with Miquella was not his own. It was implanted, compelled, manipulated. Morg was a puppet dancing on strings he could not see, and Miquella was pulling every one of them. Why? Because Miquella needed two things. First, he needed a way to enter the realm of Shadow, a place sealed away from the normal world. The secret rite scroll mentions that a lord will usher in a god's return, and the lord's soul will require a vessel. Dying in a specific way, in a specific place, would allow passage to the realm of Shadow. Morg's bloody rituals, draining Miquella's blood and life, would eventually facilitate this transition. Second, Miquella needed a vessel for Radahn's soul. He had made a vow with Radahn to make him his consort. Radahn had been infected with scarlet rot, driven mad, and would eventually be killed by the Tarnished. Miquella needed a powerful demigod body to house Radahn's soul when he resurrected him. Morg's body, strong and touched by an outer god's power, was perfect. So Miquella used Morg completely. Let him believe he was in control. Let him perform his rituals and build his dynasty and dream his dreams of power. All of it was serving Miquella's purpose, and Morg never had even a moment of genuine agency. Sir Ansbach, when he realized what Miquella had done to his lord, tried to stop it. He challenged Miquella directly, and Miquella simply charmed him too, turning the loyal knight into another follower. This is where we fully see what Miquella has become. The boy who wanted to cure his sister, the genius who built a sanctuary for outcasts. That Miquella, if he ever truly existed, is gone. What remains is someone who sees people as tools, who will manipulate, control, and use anyone if it serves his ultimate goal, who can commit atrocities while genuinely believing he is doing it for a good reason. After using Morg to facilitate his death and entry into the realm of Shadow, Miquella begins a journey where he systematically abandons every part of himself that might interfere with his goal. Following the path of Miquella in Shadow of the Erdtree, marked by crosses, we find where he discarded pieces of himself. He abandoned his flesh, as evidenced by the crosses themselves. He abandoned his great rune. He abandoned his doubt and vacillation, his fear, and perhaps most significantly, he abandoned his love. Saint Trina, who had been Miquella's other half, much like Marika and Radahn, was cast into the stone coffin fissure. The Trina's lily and Saint Trina's torch descriptions hint at this connection. When the Tarnished find Saint Trina barely alive, she begs them to kill Miquella, understanding what he has become. Love itself, the very thing that made Miquella care about healing his sister and creating a better world, was judged unnecessary and discarded. What arrived at the gate of divinity was not the kind boy who wanted to help his sister. It was a god with a plan, cold and perfect, ready to impose compassion on everyone whether they wanted it or not. And standing beside this new god, resurrected in Morg's body, was Radahn, the promised consort, brought back to fulfill a vow he may never have truly agreed to. The age of compassion was at hand. All it required was the death of everyone's free will. Waiting at the roots, Malenia's vigil. The Haligtree was dying. The bark cracked and wept rot. The branches grew in unnatural directions. The leaves turned brown and fell in slow cascades. Without Miquella's blood to nourish it, the tree could not sustain itself. And worse, Malenia's scarlet rot was spreading through it like infection through a wound. She had returned from Aeonia without the needle, without any way to contain the power within her. The refugees who had sought safety in the Haligtree found themselves living in a place of slow decay. The Albinaurics watched their promised land rot. The Cleanrot Knights saw their condition worsen. Everyone who had sought sanctuary here was now trapped in a dying place. And at the bottom of it all, Malenia stood guard. She was changing. The transformation that had begun at Aeonia continued slowly but relentlessly. Her body was becoming more infused with rot. Scarlet butterflies clustered around her. Her wings of hair and rot essence were growing more permanent. She was becoming the goddess of rot, whether she wanted to or not. Yet she did not abandon her post. Her winged helm description captures her mindset. Malenia awaited Miquella at the foot of the husk. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all. She believed in him absolutely, even as the Haligtree died around her, even as her body transformed, even as years passed with no sign of return. She was the blade of Miquella, and blades serve. But something else was growing. From the scarlet flower Malenia left at Aeonia, buds had formed, offshoots of Malenia herself. They became known as Millicent and her sisters. They were not daughters in any conventional sense, but pieces of her that had gained independent existence. Millicent felt drawn to return something to Malenia. The Unalloyed Gold needle description, when given by Millicent, reveals, "There is something I must return to Malenia, the will that was once her own, the dignity, the sense of self that allowed her to resist the call of the scarlet rot." Malenia had lost something at Aeonia. When she removed the needle and bloomed, she had given up part of herself, her pride as a warrior, her sense of self, her dignity. This adds another layer of tragedy. She stood at the roots of the Haligtree, transforming into a goddess she had never wanted to become, having sacrificed her own identity in service to her brother's plan, waiting for a return that would never come. When the Tarnished finally reaches Malenia's chamber, descending through rotting halls, they find her there, still waiting, still guarding the empty space where Miquella's cocoon had been. When she senses an intruder, she introduces herself as she always has. "I am Malenia, blade of Miquella." Not the goddess of rot, though that is what she has become. Her identity remains focused entirely on her brother. She is his blade. That is who she is. And then she adds, "And I have never known defeat." This statement is heartbreaking in its naivety. She has been defeated in every way that matters. Her body defeated by rot, her mission defeated by Morg's kidnapping, her hope defeated by abandonment. But she has never been defeated in single combat. And so she clings to this one truth because it is all she has left. The fight that follows is legendary. Malenia demonstrates why she earned her title as the greatest swordswoman. She executes the waterfowl dance with lethal precision. Halfway through the battle, she blooms again. The scarlet Aeonia manifests, transforming her fully into Malenia, goddess of rot. Wings spread wide, the power of an outer god made manifest. The scarlet Aeonia incantation reveals, each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rot advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she will become a true goddess. There is debate about whether Malenia bloomed twice or 3 times total. Some point to the giant flower outside her chamber as evidence of an earlier bloom. Others argue defeating her prevents the third bloom. We cannot know for certain. After the Tarnished defeats her, Malenia's body fades, transforming into a massive scarlet Aeonia flower. Unlike other bosses, there is no enemy felled or God slain message, leaving her final fate ambiguous. If the player completed Millicent's questline and returns the Unalloyed Gold needle to the flower, they receive Miquella's needle, suggesting something of Malenia might remain. Her story ends where it began. Devoted to her brother, defined by her curse. Waiting. Waiting for a return that never came. Waiting for a promise that was never going to be kept. She never knew her brother had orchestrated the very kidnapping she blamed herself for failing to prevent. She never knew he had discarded his love and moved beyond needing her. She never knew that her devotion was rendered irrelevant. She died, or transformed, or entered dormancy, still believing her brother was the most fearsome Empyrean of all. And in a terrible way she was right, just not in the way she thought. The path through shadow after Morg's death at the hands of the Tarnished, something strange happened. Morg's body vanished from Morgwyn Palace. This was unusual, but its significance only becomes clear when the Tarnished follows Miquella's path through shadow of the Erdtree. The realm of shadow is a place sealed away from the normal world, hidden behind veils. According to the secret rite scroll, this is where Queen Marika conducted her secret rite to ascend to godhood at the divine gateway in Enir Ilim. And it was here that Miquella came, having died in Morgwyn Palace, his essence passing through the veil. The Tarnished, following Miquella's trail, finds a path marked by crosses. At each cross, there is a sense of something having been left behind. These are sites where Miquella divested himself, systematically removing every part that might interfere with godhood. At crosses throughout the realm of shadow, we find evidence of what he abandoned. He abandoned his golden flesh. He abandoned his great rune. He abandoned his doubt and vacillation. He abandoned his fear. And most significantly, he abandoned his love. Saint Trina, his other half, like Marika and Radahn, was cast into the stone coffin fissure. When the Tarnished finds her there, barely alive, she begs them to kill Miquella. She alone understands what he has become. Love. Saint Trina implies through her presence and pleas, was the last barrier preventing Miquella from becoming a tyrant. Love made him care about consent, about genuine happiness, about whether his age of compassion was actually compassionate. Without love, Miquella could pursue his goal with perfect logical clarity, unencumbered by emotions or moral qualms. As the Tarnished follows this path, they encounter Miquella's followers, people drawn to his vision, or more accurately, drawn by his power to compel affection. There is Needle Knight Leda, fiercely loyal. There is Freyja of the Redmane, one of Radahn's former followers now serving Miquella. There is Ansbach, Morg's loyal knight who was charmed after trying to stop Miquella. There is Theolia, devoted to Saint Trina. These followers travel together toward Enir Ilim, believing they are part of something grand. Then, when the Tarnished defeats Scadutree Avatar and retrieves Miquella's Great Rune, something crucial happens. The Great Rune can be used to break Miquella's charm. When activated, the spell binding these followers shatters. Suddenly freed, they turn on each other. Old loyalties reassert themselves. Conflicts suppressed by Miquella's charm explode into violence. This is Miquella's age of compassion in microcosm. People, bound together not by genuine fellowship, but by magical compulsion. Harmony enforced through removed agency. And when that compulsion is removed, everything falls apart. This raises the question, was anything Miquella built genuine? Did anyone truly choose to serve him? The Haligtree, the sanctuary, was it compassion or manipulation? We cannot know for certain, but we can observe that when freed from his influence, his followers immediately turned on each other. At the end of this path, having abandoned everything that made him who he was, having used Morg's death to transport the body to this realm, Miquella finally reaches the divine gateway at Enir Ilim. This is where Marika became a god, and this is where Miquella intends to usurp it all, to become a god himself and impose his age of compassion. But he needs one more thing, Radahn. And so, at the divine gateway, in a ritual mirroring what his mother once did, Miquella calls forth Radahn's soul and places it into Morg's body. Radahn, who died mad from scarlet rot, is reborn as the promised consort, bound to fulfill the ancient vow. The age of compassion is about to begin. All it requires is one final obstacle, the Tarnished who has followed this path and stands between Miquella and godhood. At the gate of divinity, the promised consort, the arena at the top of Enir Ilim is beautiful in a cold, terrible way. White stone and golden light, the architecture of divinity. The divine gateway itself stands at the far end, emanating power that predates the age of the Erdtree. Standing in that arena is Radahn, but not the rot-consumed monster from Caelid. This is Radahn in his prime, perhaps even stronger, his soul housed in Morg's powerful body, wielding two colossal swords. He is the promised consort Radahn, and he is magnificent and horrible in equal measure. When the Tarnished enters, Radahn Khan does not speak. There are no words, no challenges. There is only the immediate violence of a demigod brought back for a single purpose. The fight is brutal. Radahn brings all his legendary strength, wielding gravity magic to control the battlefield. But now he also uses Blood Flame, Morg's signature power, mixing two schools of magic into a devastating combination. Halfway through the battle, Miquella himself emerges from the divine gateway, transformed into his divine aspect. No longer the withered arm in a cocoon. This is Miquella as a god, beautiful and terrible, radiating power. He has 4 arms, like ancient gods, like Rani. The message is unmistakable. Miquella has succeeded. He has become a god. He immediately moves to embrace Radahn, joining the fight, empowering his consort, completing the bond between God and Lord. He speaks with divine authority. If you have known sin, if you grieve for this world, then yield the path forward to us, to I, Miquella, and my promised consort, Radahn. Unused dialogue gives us more. I hereby swear, to every living being, and every living soul. Now comes the age of our Eden, a 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion. Beginning here, love encompasses all. No living thing will be denied, no deed censured. This is Miquella's vision, an age where love encompasses all, where nothing is denied, no deed censured. It sounds beautiful. It sounds compassionate. Until you remember, Miquella has abandoned love itself. The love he speaks of is compulsion, not choice. Encompassing all means removing the ability to stand apart. Denying nothing means removing moral judgment. This is compassion enforced at the point of a sword. And the Tarnished, who has seen all of this, says no. The fight continues against both Radahn and Miquella united. But there is one crucial detail. Miquella's charm does not work on the Tarnished. Miquella's great rune protects against his compulsion when equipped. But even without it, the Tarnished demonstrates remarkable resistance. Needle Knight Leda comments that the Tarnished seems unchanged by Miquella's presence. Perhaps it is strength of character, the blessing of grace, or simply that those who have experienced the depths of the lands between cannot be charmed into believing in simple solutions anymore. Whatever the reason, the Tarnished fights on. And eventually, impossibly, victory is achieved. Radahn falls. Miquella's divine form falters. The god and his consort are defeated. After the battle, an interactive memory appears. The Tarnished can witness a moment from the past showing young Miquella approaching Radahn. "Lord brother, I'm going to be a god. If we honor our part of the vow, promise me you'll be my consort. I'll make the world a gentler place." We do not hear Radahn's response. We do not see his reaction. The memory ends without showing whether he agreed willingly, or was compelled, or felt obligated. This ambiguity is perhaps intentional. The truth of Miquella's character exists in that ambiguous space. Did he genuinely believe he was making the world better? Or did he knowingly manipulate everyone? Based on everything we've seen, the most likely truth is this. Miquella started with genuine good intentions. He truly wanted to heal his sister. He truly wanted to create a sanctuary. He truly believed in a gentler world. But the moment he learned to compel affection, he stepped onto a slope with no footing. Once you start using people as tools for their own good, once you take away choice because you know better, once you convince yourself the end justifies any means, there is no bottom. Miquella fell all the way. He could abandon love itself and not see the irony. He could orchestrate Morg's complete destruction and call it part of a plan for compassion. He could leave his sister to rot while pursuing apotheosis and still believe he was doing the right thing. He became exactly what he set out to oppose. A god who would reshape the world, removing everyone's agency, imposing their will, all while genuinely believing it was for everyone's benefit. The kindest demigod became the most dangerous one, and in the end he failed because one tarnished warrior refused to accept his paradise. Love as a weapon, the price of compassion. There is a question that haunts Miquella and Malenia's story. When does helping someone become using them? When does love become control? When does compassion become cruelty? Miquella created the Unalloyed Gold needle to help his sister. This was genuine good, a creation that gave Malenia years of life, that allowed her to become the warrior she wanted to be. The needle was a gift of love, but Miquella also learned how to compel affection. The bewitching branch proves this capability, and he used this ability extensively on the Haligtree's followers, on Morg, on Ansbach, on countless others. At what point did the boy who wanted to cure his sister become the god who would cure the world's free will? When did "I want to help" turn into "I know what's best for you"? When did love become a weapon? Perhaps there was never a clear moment. Perhaps it was gradual, each small compromise leading to the next, each use of compulsion seeming justified. Just this once, just for this person, just to make them understand. The road to Miquella's final plan is paved with these compromises, each one individually defensible, each one part of a larger pattern that is indefensible. He created a sanctuary for outcasts, genuinely helping those who had nowhere else to go, but he also gathered an army of followers who might not have been able to choose freely. He developed unalloyed gold to resist outer gods, freeing people from external manipulation. But he used that same gold to impose his own manipulation. He worked tirelessly to cure his sister, demonstrating deep love. But he also sent her to fight Radahn in service of a plan she didn't understand, leading her to remove the needle and surrender to the curse. He orchestrated his own kidnapping to further his plan. But in doing so, he condemned his sister to years of waiting, to watching the Haligtree decay, to transforming into the goddess of rot, believing herself a failure when the kidnapping was his design. Malenia was the blade of Miquella. She defined her entire existence around serving her brother, and Miquella used that devotion ruthlessly, allowing her to sacrifice everything while he pursued a plan that had moved beyond needing her. When Malenia fades into the Scarlet Aeonia, she dies still believing her brother would keep his promise, still believing she was important to him, still waiting for a return that would never come because Miquella had abandoned his love. This is perhaps the cruelest aspect. Not that he manipulated enemies like Mog, though that is terrible. Not that he compelled strangers, though that violates their autonomy. But that he did this to his sister, the one person whose devotion was genuine and freely given, who never needed to be charmed because she loved him, truly. He let her wait. He let her suffer. He let her transform into the very thing she had fought against becoming. All while pursuing godhood, a plan that required him to abandon his love, which means abandoning her. Millicent's quest to return dignity to Malenia becomes heartbreaking. What Malenia lost at Aeonia was her sense that her sacrifice meant something, that her devotion was valuable, and Miquella's plan reveals none of it mattered. He moved on without her. Saint Trina, cast into the fissure, begs the Tarnished to kill Miquella. His own abandoned love recognizes what he has become is monstrous. The tragedy is Miquella probably still believes he is doing the right thing. He removed his doubt. He removed everything that might make him reconsider. In his perfectly logical, perfectly terrible mind, becoming a god who enforces compassion is still the right answer. This is what makes him compelling and disturbing. He is not simply evil. He genuinely believes he is the hero, the one who will save everyone, create the better world the Golden Order failed to make. He just doesn't understand that a world where everyone is forced to be kind is not actually gentler. It is a prison with golden bars. And in his pursuit of this vision, he became willing to imprison every soul in the lands between in a cage of compelled compassion, where no one could choose cruelty because no one could choose anything at all. The weapon he chose was love itself, love twisted into tool, love as compulsion rather than choice, love as the mechanism of control. Malenia loved her brother freely, genuinely, without compulsion. She was what Miquella claimed to want, a person whose devotion came from true connection. And in the end, he abandoned her anyway. Because genuine love, the kind that comes with choice and risk, was too messy for his perfect plan. Better to ensure everyone loved him through compulsion. Better to take away the uncertainty. Better to build paradise on violated wills rather than genuine connection. This is the final tragedy of the twin prodigies. Malenia gave everything freely and was abandoned. Miquella tried to make everyone give everything and was stopped. The blade waited in vain. The god fell one step short, and the age of compassion died before it could be born, killed by the same tarnished who had ended so many other visions. Epilogue. The legacy of cursed love. The Haligtree still stands, a hollow monument to failed ambitions. The rot has consumed much, but the tree remains, too grand to fall easily, too infused with divine blood to simply die. It is a tomb and testament, a place where the rejected once found sanctuary and now find only decay. At its roots, a scarlet Aeonia blooms where millennia fell or transformed or entered dormancy. Pilgrims still occasionally make the journey north, drawn by old stories, only to find a rotting husk. Morg's body lies wherever Radahn's final defeat left it. The Lord of Blood, who built his dynasty on elevating Miquella, was used more completely than anyone, his very identity subsumed. Even his corpse was rendered into a tool, denied even the dignity of remaining himself in death. Somewhere in the realm of shadow, perhaps in the arena at Enir Ilim, perhaps scattered like dust, is what remains of Miquella, the kind one, the unalloyed, the most fearsome Empyrean. He came so close. One more victory, one more step, and he would have succeeded. He would have become a god with the power to impose his age of compassion. And the Tarnished stopped him, not because the Tarnished understood all the implications or had a better vision, but simply because the Tarnished refused to yield, refused to accept this particular paradise. There is an argument that Miquella's world might have been better than the current lands between. The age of the Erdtree is one of rigid hierarchies, omen thrown into sewers, constant war. Miquella's age, even enforced through compulsion, might have ended much suffering, but it would have done so by removing everyone's ability to choose anything else. And a gentler world achieved through obliterated free will is not actually gentler. It is simply quieter. Malenia never knew any of this. If she lives, if she waits dormant in that flower, she died or changed still believing in her brother, still faithful, still waiting. In a terrible way, perhaps that is mercy. Better to wait in ignorance than to know her devotion was counted as irrelevant, that her suffering was part of a plan she was never meant to understand. The story of the twin prodigies is ultimately a tragedy without villains, only victims of circumstance and curse who made increasingly desperate choices until they became monstrous despite never intending to. Or so we want to believe. But what if there's one more truth we need to face? One final reveal that recontextualizes everything we've just experienced? Here it is. Miquella's curse of eternal childhood. The curse that supposedly drove everything. The curse that made him desperate, that justified his search for cures, that explained why he needed to become a god. What if it was never really a curse at all? Think about it. Every other curse in Elden Ring is described as an affliction, a disease, a burden imposed by outer gods or cosmic forces. Malenia's scarlet rot came from an outer god. The Omen curse came from some primordial source of chaos. Godwyn's half-death was the result of assassination, but Miquella's eternal youth? It's only ever described as stemming from being born of a single god, not imposed by an outer god, not a divine punishment, just a trait, a condition. And here's the disturbing part. Eternal youth in a world where age brings decay isn't actually a curse. It's immortality. It's unlimited time to think, to plan, to prepare. It's the ability to wait out enemies, to seem harmless while gathering power, to be underestimated by every opponent you face. Miquella was trapped in A child's body, yes, but he also had thousands of years in that body to become the most brilliant mind the lands between had ever seen. He had endless time to perfect unalloyed gold. He had centuries to learn how to compel affection. He had millennia to plan every step of his ascension to godhood. What if the curse was actually the greatest gift any aspiring god could ask for? What if Miquella understood this from the very beginning? What if every single thing he did, creating the needles, building the Haligtree, charming his followers, orchestrating his kidnapping, using his sister, sacrificing Morg, resurrecting Radahn, what if all of it was the plan not of a desperate victim trying to cure himself, but of an immortal genius who had thousands of years to craft the perfect scheme? What if Miquella never wanted to cure his curse at all? What if he wanted to become a god, and realizing he already had the perfect foundation for it, he simply convinced everyone, including possibly himself, that he was a tragic victim who needed their help, their devotion, their sacrifice? The Haligtree knight armor tells us the tree ultimately failed to grow into an Erdtree. But what if it was never meant to succeed? What if it was always just a staging ground, a way to gather followers, a distraction while Miquella pursued his real plan? The divine gateway in the realm of shadow, the same path his mother Marika took to godhood? Malenia waited at the roots of a dying tree for a brother who would never return. But maybe he never intended to return. Maybe her devotion was just another tool, her transformation into the goddess of rot, just another acceptable cost. We want to believe Miquella started good and became corrupted. We want to believe there was a moment when things went wrong. We want to believe the kind boy who loved his sister was real. But the evidence, when you line it all up, suggests something far more unsettling. That Miquella was playing a game that started before the shattering, before the Haligtree, possibly before he ever created unalloyed gold. That the genius child prodigy looked at the world, saw what was needed to reshape it, and simply did it. Methodically, patiently, over thousands of years, using everyone and everything as tools, including his own reputation for kindness, the most fearsome Empyrean of all. Malenia called him that. She was right. Just not because of his wisdom or allure, because the most fearsome thing about Miquella wasn't his power to compel affection, or his brilliance, or even his plan to become a god. It was his patience, his willingness to sacrifice anything and anyone, his ability to commit atrocities over millennia while maintaining the appearance of kindness. And perhaps most terrifying, his capacity to believe his own story, to genuinely see himself as the compassionate one, the kind one, the one who would make the world gentler, to commit evil while absolutely convinced he was doing good. That's the real curse. Not eternal childhood, but eternal certainty. The curse of a mind so brilliant it could justify anything, so logical it could reason its way past any moral boundary, so patient it could treat people as chess pieces and still call it love. Miquella wanted to heal his sister and make a kinder world. Malenia wanted to protect her brother and be worthy of his faith. Neither set out to become what they became. Or maybe Miquella did. Maybe that was the plan all along. And maybe that's the most horrifying possibility of all. Of course, this is interpretation. The game never explicitly confirms that Miquella saw his curse as an advantage from the start. We cannot peer into his mind across thousands of years and know with certainty when he realized the power his eternal youth gave him. But the pattern is there. The evidence supports it. And once you see it, you cannot unsee how perfectly everything fits if Miquella was never the victim of his story, but always its author. But intentions matter far less than actions, and the actions of these twins left scars on the world that will never fully heal. Caelid will rot forever. The Haligtree will never achieve what it was meant to become. Countless people were used, manipulated, discarded. And yet, there is something deeply moving about their devotion to each other, even as that devotion was twisted into something toxic. Miquella genuinely tried to save Malenia. Malenia genuinely served Miquella with everything she had. The tragedy is not that they didn't love each other, but that their love was not enough to save either of them. In the end, the twin Empyreans stand as a warning about the danger of pursuing perfection, of believing so strongly in your own rightness that you stop being able to question yourself, of loving someone so much that you lose sight of what they actually need. Miquella became a god who would force the world to be gentle. Malenia became a goddess waiting for a brother who would never return. And both, in their own ways, were exactly what the other needed them not to be. The lands between continues without them, as broken as ever, but at least still free to choose its own path. The Tarnished saw to that. If you have known sin, if you grieve for this world, remember this. Compassion forced is cruelty renamed. Kindness compelled is imprisonment decorated with gentleness. And love itself can become the most dangerous weapon when wielded by someone too certain of their own rightness to doubt their own methods. The age of compassion never came. Perhaps that is the world's greatest tragedy, or perhaps it is the world's greatest salvation. We may never know for certain, but the twin prodigies, in their failure and ruin, gave us a story worth remembering, a cautionary tale about the price of perfection and the danger of certainty, a reminder that even gods can be wrong, especially when they are most sure they are right. Sleep well, travelers of the lands between. And remember the twins who loved each other enough to tear the world apart. Thank you for journeying with me through this story. If you enjoyed this exploration of Miquella and Malenia's tragic tale, please consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into gaming lore. And remember, in your own life, stay humble enough to doubt, kind enough to listen, and brave enough to admit when your good intentions have led you astray. Sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is give people the freedom to choose, even if they choose differently than we would want. Good night.